Well, I guess I will begin my journey with what got me into music. One of my first memories ever was I had no idea how old I was. Very young, but I remember vividly spending hours listening and staring at the album cover, The Destroyer, which I actually have right behind me here, the poster. One of my first memories, just spending hours listening to that album, staring at it. Other memories would be my mom in the living room blaring Journey, REO Speedwagon, Triumph, all the good stuff from the 70s. I don't know if I grew out of it at that point for a while, but I got into music again in the 80s, believe it or not, with the Michael Jackson fever. When Thriller came out, it was all about Michael Jackson, and then of course Purple Rain, Prince came out. Hooked. One thing I do remember vividly, this is in my grade school years, so probably third grade. There was an older kid down the street. His name was Ron Belcher. Lived about four houses down. Heard me blaring Prince, I believe, Purple Rain, I'm sure. We all had the little boom boxes, and we walk around the neighborhood with kids. And I'm blaring it, and he comes out. He listened to that crap for it. Listen to some real music. And I'm like, what do you got? And he plays Panama by Van Halen. I hear Eddie's tone. Instantly, who's Prince? Who's Michael Jackson? This is the way to go. That point, we became pretty good buddies. He turned me on to all the classics from that era. Just the Sisters Stay Hungry, Quiet Riot, Metal Health, Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil, Ozzy, Bark at the Moon. Those are like the albums. I remember those vividly. As far as getting into guitar, it does segue into that. Never heard him play guitar, but he had a guitar. And I remember it was an old Strat with the name Decca on top of it. Cheap pawn shop off-brand. But I remember spending hours in his basement just hanging out, listening to this music, staring at that guitar. He must have noticed because one day he said, I don't play. I don't. He just gives it to me to play around with. It wasn't worth anything. He gave it to me to start messing with. So, I go home. I have no idea, like most guitar players that start, how to tune it, what I'm even doing. I'm watching videos on TV, Mick Mars, Ace Frehley, trying to mimic what they're doing, looking, where are their fingers at, what are they doing? And I think one of the first songs I ever figured out was the beginning of Detroit Rock City, the dun-dun-dun part. As soon as I learned it, I'm like, I can do this. That's kind of what got me hooked on it in the beginning. Did that for a couple months, wasn't getting anywhere, kind of got bored and set it to the side. At that point, I'm in junior high. Went to junior high with three of my closest friends that come to mind, all three local musicians. One gentleman doesn't play anymore, Travis Sinks, Brian Morrison, who was bass player for Nevitt's Crest, and Nate Arrington. All three of them had also picked up guitar and were taking lessons from Tom Hopwood. My mom, we grew up poor. My mom didn't have the money for guitar lessons. So Nate, I remember this very vividly. He's one of the first people I know who learned how to play a Kiss song. And I believe it was Strutter. But he showed me how to tune my guitar and showed me my first power chord and how to play the rhythm part to Strutter. At that point, begged my mom, I need guitar lessons, I need guitar lessons, I need guitar lessons. She finally agreed. Tom, unfortunately at the time, was giving lessons at Byerly in Northwoods Mall. He was totally full. And he was like, but we have other teachers. So they hooked me up with this older lady, I can't remember her name for the life of me. And in retrospect, I should have stayed with her because she wanted to teach me theory. So she's teaching me my cowboy chords, teaching me my theory, my scales. Meanwhile, my buddies, Travis, Nathan, and Brian, are cruising away learning Kiss song after Kiss song which was like the band for us four. Every week, Nate, hey, I learned Cold Gin. Travis, hey, I learned Rock and Roll All Night. Brian was more into Motley Crue at the time, so hey, I learned Shout of the Devil or whatever song it was that week. And I'm like, what'd you learn? I'm like, I know what pentatonic scale is. It wasn't cool. I wanted to play the songs now. I didn't want to sit there and run scales and work on them. So I kind of stopped working on that stuff, and I was hanging out with Travis and Nathan and Brian, depending on the day, and they were teaching me what Tom had taught them. Tom finally had an opening. I stopped taking lessons from the other lady, I don't remember her name, and started going to Tom. Tom pushed theory on me. I just want to play songs. You're teaching Nathan all these songs. I want to learn songs. So back in the day, you'd bring in a cassette tape. Here's a song I want to learn. Tom pop it in, listen to it. He'd show you the chords. He'd tell you what the chords were at the time. B, C, A, so on. So you're learning your chords as you were going, but he wasn't teaching you why this worked with each other. Like I said before, we grew up poor, so my mom could only afford so many lessons. I took lessons for about, I want to say, 2-3 months max, and that's all she could do. Luckily, Tom had taught me how to develop my ear enough to where I could learn songs on my own by listening to them. I remember the very first song I ever learned by ear by myself was Thief in the Night, which is a song off the Crazy Nights album that I was really big into back in the day. And I remember it pretty vividly because I had learned it and I was excited, and Brian lived across the street from me. And I remember going over to his house and being like, dude, look what I just did. Oh, when'd you learn that? I'm like, just now I figured it out. He's like, no way. So I was excited, hey, I'm a guitar player and I can learn stuff by ear. I don't need lessons anymore. So that was my beginning of guitar. From there, I just kept on learning songs as we went. Like most guitar players when they first start, you typically don't learn the whole song. You learn parts of songs to impress your friends and to impress girls. So that's what it originally started off at. I didn't care about the solos. I'd get those eventually. Eventually I would try to hack my way through them, or I was always pick songs without solos. Lick It Up by Kiss being one that I can think of right out of the gate. From there, I just play guitar by myself, looking for bands to jam with. We did something brief with Nathan and Travis. They didn't need 3 guitar players. Nathan wound up going to bass. Nathan and Travis had a really good relationship. They were almost like brothers. At that time, I actually started dating my current wife, Summer, and kind of stepped away from it. Let them do their thing. I kind of lost interest in guitar at that point. Still had one, but didn't play very much. I don't know, a year or two later, I wound up picking it up again. Had a band very briefly. My first band I was ever in was called Abyss. And it was myself, Rob, and Jay Marvin, and a guy by the name of Brian. I cannot remember his last name, but he was the only kid we knew who played drums. He lived in the rich area of East Peoria, and I remember vividly his mom had us all sign a contract that we wouldn't do drugs and that we didn't smoke pot because they were on the up and up, and of course we were the dirty kids that lived in the bottoms. So it was just assumed we were the druggies in the area, which may or may not have been true at the time. So we did a couple shows. I actually played 2 shows, both at Visions, and I remember it pretty vividly because they were my first shows. But I remember booking them, and the owner was like, "What do you guys charge?" I'm like, "I don't know, $100." Yeah, we can do it. We were ecstatic. I had no idea what to charge. We were ecstatic. So we played the 2 shows. We were horrid. I mean, we were horrible. We were nowhere near ready. We just wanted to get out there and play. I actually did not play guitar in that band. I played bass and sang, depending on what song it was. Myself and Jay Marvin switched back and forth. Neither one of us had really any skill on either one, to be honest with you. We were rock stars. We were up there playing. It was awesome. The girls were paying attention. It was cool. That was my introduction to shows and gigging out. So but after the two Abyss shows, like everything back then, and in most bands, it's your first band in high school. They're not going to last. It was my junior or senior year in high school. At that point, me and Summer were actually getting very serious. I lost interest, not in music at all. It's always been number one in my life for the most part. But I just lost interest in playing. The band, like I said, we weren't good. I knew it. I went back and watched old videos. I'm like, wow, we suck. But it was cool. Like I said, I met my wife from it. She blew smoke up my ass. You guys are great, but whatever. So I got tired of it. Stopped playing. And I wound up buying a cheap BC Rich Warlock, just because I just wanted the guitar to have in the house. Didn't play in bands for years. Graduated high school, got a real job. Summer got pregnant with my son Eric, and focused everything on him and her. Got married. Did the the fatherhood husband thing, and played video games more than anything, listening to music. And one day I just got a hair at my butt and picked the guitar up, put it in tune, and started playing along with some songs that were just happened to be playing on the radio. And Summer commented, she's like, I've never heard you play guitar. When we met, you played bass. I didn't even know you knew how to play guitar. And that's where I started. I'm not a bass player. I only played bass because Rob was better at guitar, and I kind of lost the short end of the straw on that. Horrible bassist. I had no business playing bass. But anyway, so I started playing it. Liked it. It was starting to get my love back for it. I actually went out and dropped a little bit of money, bought a real nice high-end Epiphone Les Paul at the time, and really started getting serious. Started scoping the ads at Florey's. Back then, Florey's and Elmore's had the bulletin boards, and you go in there and, hey, you're looking for a guitar player in this style, and had the little tabs, so you pull the phone number and audition. I auditioned for a couple bands. Some I was nowhere near qualified to play for. This is back in the hair metal days where everything George Lynch shredding, and I'm Ace Frehley and Angus Young at the time. Hey, can you play Panama by Van Halen? Hell no. That's not happening. You guys know Cool Gin? So that's where I was at that point. So it was hard to find a band. The first real band I did find, though, was out of Pekin called Only Child. But it was a cool band. They were gigging out. They had a guitar player that wasn't working out. I worked my butt off to get that audition, and I got it. We played together for about 3 months. Never made it out of the garage because at that point in my life I was really unhappy with my job, and decided to move to Florida. So I told them, hey, this has been fun. I appreciate making this my first real band as a guitar player, but unfortunately I'm moving, and so I had to quit that band and move to Florida. When I was in Florida, pretty much did the same thing. As soon as I got down there and got established, I hit all the music stores and did find a band called Broken Toys. It was my first introduction to all original music. They did no covers, all original. Everything was already written. They had a fantastic lead guitar player, and I came in as a rhythm guitar player. We never played any gigs, but we did practice in a really cool studio in Boynton Beach, Florida. And one of the coolest memories I have is walking in as Johnny Depp was walking out carrying a guitar and amp, which was it was cool. I was like, oh, I'm playing at the same place Johnny Depp was practicing in, so it was kind of cool. We only lived in Florida for a year. We hated it, so we wound up moving back to Illinois. At that point, repeat from before, I started looking for bands. Couldn't find anything. Actually, there was an ad in Florey's looking for a guitar player along the styles of, and it listed several bands. Some I could pull off, some I could not. Yeah, I'll answer it anyway. So I called the number that was on there, wound up going to a house in Pekin. I walked downstairs, and there sits Tommy Edwards, John Masalia, and Pat Bogner. And I knew who all three of them were at the time, and they still are. They're all three local heroes. They really are. And I'm like, oh, hell no. And I'll never forget it. John, oh, I love it. John was like, put your guitar on and just play. You're fine. Because I told him, I was like, I'm going to waste your guys' time. I am nowhere near your caliber. John's like, put the damn guitar on and play. So we played a handful of songs for a couple of weeks. The set list was really cool. We did Finding My Way by Rush. It was my first Queensryche song I ever learned, Take Hold of the Flame, which would have been awesome. This is back in the day when you could gotten away with playing that song. And Tommy Edwards hit that freaking note every time. And I still to this day get goosebumps. We never gigged it out. We practiced for about 2 months, and it just didn't go anywhere. I don't know if... I think, if I remember correctly, Tommy had to take a break for a while. And I found out later that band eventually became Yellow Dye 5, or kind of part of it. But yeah, it never got out of the basement. In retrospect, I'm glad. I was nowhere near ready to play with that caliber of musicians. Like I told them, I did okay, but I was hacking my way through stuff. One memory I have is on the Take Hold of the Flame. One of the things you do when you're first starting to play guitar lead is you cheat, and your biggest cheat is your wah pedal. And I remember playing Take Hold of the Flame, and I'm playing the solo, and I actually played it very well. But I remember John, one night, when I'm playing it, and he kicks my wah pedal. It was a bad horse. He's like, there's no wah in Queensryche. So that's one story I do remember about that particular band. But that was the end of that band. Didn't go anywhere. First band actually went somewhere. Again, back to the drawing board with looking for ads. A band called Pet Rock. Great guys. We actually played quite a few shows. Really different set list. We did a lot of, I want to say punk, but it wasn't punk. It was more like pop punk. Blink-182, Ultimate Fake Book. A lot of the 90s college music. We did, Weezer. Simple stuff to play, but nobody else was doing it. So we thought, this might go over. Peoria's not really that college scene. Had we gotten booked in places like Bloomington or Champaign, I think it would have went over a lot better. But we did that for about a year, and it just never went anywhere. Clay wound up having to walk away. He's a teacher, and I don't remember if he was transferring schools or what the situation was, but he had to walk away. We had a singer for him. There was a guy in the area, at the time Braille was really big, and they had a gentleman by the name of Robbie. They called him Robbie the Roadie at the time. And Robbie was their roadie, and he would help Josh and Gary and Pete out. And I remember going to see Braille one night, and they did, I think, Higher by Creed. And I'm there with Scotty, and he nails it. I mean, it sounds just like the guy. It sounds like Scott Stapp. Good-looking guy. Scott's like, that's our money maker. We need that guy in our band now. So I talked to him. We became, really good friends, and he decided to join Pet Rock, but we were going to change the name to 9-Volt Theory. And, 9-Volt Theory, like I said, we played 2 shows. I think it was Nick and Scott. Just they weren't really feeling it. They wound up moving on and formed another band. I remember Drew wound up calling me and being like, "Hey, I got this drummer cat looking for a bass player and a guitar player, and he's got a female singer." And I'm like, me and Robbie were pretty close back then, and I was like, "Yeah." So I don't want to send him a package deal, but what do you think about Robbie coming too? He's like, "Well, yeah, come along, it'd be cool. We'll see what happens. Maybe this female singer is horrible." And we didn't know what we were getting into. We didn't know who the singer was. So we wound up showing up, and as fate seems to always play its role in my life, it was Terry from Only Child. The band I had previously left to move to Florida. So we walk in there, and there's Terry, and she's like, "Jason, you're back." And I'm like, "Yeah." She was like, "This is awesome." And so we turned, and that was my first introduction to Corey Piles. Corey Piles was the drummer. So we ran several songs. I remembered all the Only Child stuff. We did "Zombie" by the Cranberries before it was a radio hit and cool. And I remember Terry just nailed it. It sounded just like her. And then we did a couple songs with Robbie at the same time. And it was Corey's idea. I will give Corey 100% credit. Corey's like, "I got a proposition. You guys got a singer. I got a singer. I need a bass player, and I need a guitar player. There's a bassist, there's a guitar player, but there's 2 singers. Put them together." So as far as I know, we were the first band in the area to have a male and female singer, and that became Hectic. That band blew up in a good way. We wound up getting, I think within the first month of starting to call bars, we were booked solid for a year, every weekend. It just blew up. I don't want to say it's because we were that good, because we were decent, but it was new. Nobody had ever seen it before, having a male and female singer. Robbie would sing half the night, she'd sing half the night. Their harmonies were really good together. It's a fun band. We didn't do much metal. We did a lot of rock and a lot of dance songs, which again, I think that contributed to being getting so many gigs and being booked so much. But that lasted about a year, and I think it got big. Sometimes they say when you get big too fast, it can hurt you. And I agree. I went from this is my first real band. Pet Rock was the first band I gigged out with, but we had like 1 gig a month. Hectic every weekend. So I go from having 3 weekends off a month to I'm booked every weekend. I think it got to be too much. We didn't have time to learn new songs. There started to be some animosity between the band members, and we were all real close friends, so it really sucked at the time. I remember it vividly the night it ended. We actually were playing Warnie Hansman's dad's benefit. And me and Robbie had got there early and watched one of the opening bands called Fear of Clowns. Anyway, Hectic played its set. We had a really bad set. At the end of the set, Terry was like, "I'm done, guys. You do your thing. I'm done. I don't want to do this no more." So that band was over. I was burned out. I was kind of wanting to move on more into the music that I was listening to, which was metal, heavier stuff. But Fear of Clowns had actually broken up also at Warnie's benefit. They had, which I don't know if a lot of people know this, Fear of Clowns was originally a 3-piece. A gentleman by the name of Josh, I can't remember his last name, he played guitar and sang, Joey Wright on bass, and Mark Tolan, of course, on drums. And they were doing the heavy stuff, but then they were also doing a lot. Josh was a big Nirvana fan. He sounds just like Cobain. So they were doing a lot of Nirvana, some Jane's Addiction even. Very broad set list. Anyway, they had a blow up at Warnie's benefit, and Josh is out I'm now in Fear of Clowns. I'm in the band I've always wanted to be in, doing metal, doing heavy music. Stuff I'm listening to is also the stuff I'm playing. Also, most of the stuff they're doing, no guitar solos, so now I don't have to stress about what I did not learn in the past. This is right in my wheelhouse. Heavy music, fun to play, I'm listening to it. Me, Joey, and Mark had got along great right out of the gate. So we put the word out, a couple people auditioned. We wound up hiring Mike Poston. He was in the band 6 months, give or take, maybe a little longer. We did quite a few shows, and I thought he did a really, really good job with the music. We were doing stuff like Deftones, which you got to be a singer and a screamer to do that stuff, and Mike killed it. I knew Mike from back in the Mr. Whoopi days. I used to follow them around quite a bit. So I was definitely a fan. Fear of Clowns was starting to get pretty big on the scene. We had one original that they had actually written before I'd even joined, called Suffocating, and they wanted to go a little further. Just myself, Mark, and Joey, I think, without Mike. Mike couldn't make a practice, so we could start writing. We told Mike, hey, we want to kind of move towards originals a little bit, not away from covers, but we kind of want to do what Jinx used to do, which they would do both. They would do covers and originals together. Mike was still in Mr. Whoopi, and he was also in an original band called Crawl Space with Fig. And he wasn't feeling it, so he wound up leaving. I remember Mark really, really wanted Mitch Bland in the band. Mitch was a huge supporter right out of the gate, even before I was in Fear of Clowns. This is in the heyday of Rude Awakening. They had given Fear of Clowns a couple opening spots, so Mark and Mitch had become pretty good friends. So we kept on asking Mitch, hey, join, but Mark had this little stipulation. He really didn't want Mitch to be in another band. Rude Awakening is Mitch's baby, so he's not going to walk away from that. And Mitch, I don't know, he was more into the hair metal, proggy stuff. He wasn't into the heavy stuff, although he could do it. He was helping us out. He was singing at our practices just so we could have rehearsal time and get our chops up and not lose what we had already started. But anyway, Mitch is, hey, you guys are great, but Rude Awakening, that's where I'm at. That's my baby. I'm not going anywhere. But I know this guy. His name's Glenn Denham. And I'm like, I know Glenn. I've seen Glenn before in Medicine Man, and I think the last band he was in before he joined Clowns was Boogeyman. Don't Be Afraid to Rock was their logo. So cheesy, so Glenn. And I remember telling Mark, I'm like, oh, we gotta audition this guy, man. He's really good. He has an upper register, like Mitch. Their vocals are very comparable. So Glenn's like, or Mark's like, yeah, get a hold of him. All right, cool. So he gives me, the audition cassette back in the day, and I'm in retrospect, I didn't understand it at the time, but I wound up giving it to Glenn, and the next day he calls me. He's like, dude, I have no idea how I'm gonna sing this stuff. Glenn showed up, and he absolutely freaking killed it. He did. You could tell he was nervous. It took him a couple practices to develop his growl. He kind of had a screech in the beginning. It still sounded good, but it took him a while to develop it, but he did. And he busted his ass. The first show he did, he comes out, this is where the makeup came from. He comes out, it was a spoof just to be Glenn and be goofy wearing makeup, and the crowd loved it. We all loved it. We're like, it works, do it. We wound up writing at that point. were getting pretty serious about originals. They were going over really well. Um, at that point, Joey kind of took a posting turn, if you will, to where he didn't want to just do originals. He wanted to still do covers. So he wound up walking away. And Mark looked around for a bass player, and a gentleman's name popped up, who was Tim. We call him Timmy. And come to find out, Tim is actually one hell of a guitar player, total shredder. But he came in as a bassist. He had just moved here from Monmouth. He was in a stoner metal band prior to that as a guitar player, and but he showed up with 5-string bass. That was a prerequisite. You have to play 5-string because I'm playing a 7-string tuned to drop G sharp, which is still stupid. But that's what we do. That's our tuning. It works. No, Tim killed it. One of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life. Loved him. Love him to death. Miss him dearly. Miss playing with him. He's still around, but he retired. He's into doing the cooking barbecue thing now. But that was the Fear of Clowns that a lot of people know and love, which was the Mark, myself, Tim, and Glenn. We were the one that we put up the CD out, Chlorophobia. At that point, things were blowing up pretty big. We had done the Freak Fest 2 years in a row. Started getting gigs pretty much whenever we wanted, wherever we wanted. Packed houses every night. Everything was going perfect. Did that wrote out, geez, so long ago, I want to say 3 to 5 years, give or take, something like that. Tim decided he was going to move on. He wanted to kind of go back to playing guitar. Me and Tim were very, very close. I started to reconsider, am I going to like this with a different bass player? And at the time, I was also kind of getting burned out. I didn't realize it. I had done a couple fill-in gigs for Trailer Park at the time. I was, pretty good friends with Boo and John, and Chris Camp was in the band at the time. And it was an instant replay. I played it. I liked it. I had a lot of fun. John and Boo were hilarious to play out with. There was chicks dancing, so it was a nice change. It put a little bug in me, be it the right bug, the wrong bug, but I became disinterested in Fear of Clowns at that point. At that point, Robbie Sparks came back into my life. Just called me up. We started hanging back out again. He pitched putting Hectic back together. Didn't hey, you don't need to quit Fear of Clowns. You can do both. That was my introduction to balancing bands. Originally Hectic 2 was myself, Robbie Sparks, Drew Barnes. We had a different drummer, Joey Franks, and we had a different female singer, Michelle Kiefer. And I need to go all the way back to the original Hectic. I feel so bad. There was another member of that who was my dad. He was the other guitar player in Hectic, and I cannot believe I didn't want to forget anybody. I made a cheat sheet on my phone, and I cannot believe I did not mention that. I'm sorry, Dad. But anyway, wow, we put Hectic 2 back together, or Hectic back together. We called it Hectic 2, which I remember Chris Boo loved because he called us Hectic 2 Electric Boogaloo. I'll never forget that. In the grand scheme of things, they always say don't let history repeat itself because there's a reason people break up in the first place. Kiss has said that before with the reunion tour. And unfortunately, that's what happened. It didn't last long. Joey was only in the band, I think, for 2 shows. We wound up getting Corey back. So at that point, it was myself, my dad, Dennis McMichael, Shelly, Robbie, Drew, and Corey. Did a couple shows. It just didn't last. It fell apart. It did do enough damage, for lack of a better word, that I wanted to start playing that kind of music again, that I was becoming more and more unhappy with Fear of Clowns, which in retrospect was crazy, because this was the height of where I think Fear of Clowns ever got. When I walked away, we were at the peak of where I think it ever went. I could be wrong. It depends on your personal opinion. But in my opinion, that was as big as Clowns had gotten at that point. And I just walked away from it. I wanted to do something else. I wound up taking two of the members from Trailer Park, Chris Brewer and Joe Belcher, and Shelly from Hectic. And we recruited Jason Laughlin also, who was in Trailer Park at the time. And we formed a band called Undercover. Undercover was a fun band. It was a lot of classic rock. We did some danceable stuff as well. Kind of a hybrid between Hectic and Trailer Park, if you will. It was nice. I could actually play my sixth string. I was playing in regular tuning. I was doing solos along with Jason Laughlin, which was great. We did that for a while. Jason actually had an opportunity to join Rude Awakening. That's where his heart is that kind of music. Go. If that's what you want to do. No hard feelings. We're all friends. This is a cover band. We do this to have fun. So he went to Rude Awakening. So at this point, we need another guitar player. In comes John Wheatley. Boo called John to play guitar, and now we have another vocalist. So kind of back in the same formula as Hectic. Now we got a male and a female vocalist. There's nothing we pretty much cannot do as far as popular music. We did Undercover for a while. Much like Jason Laughlin, Chris Brewer actually had an opportunity to join Jam Sandwich. You get an opportunity to join a band like Jam Sandwich, you take it. No hard feelings whatsoever. Go. Definitely. So Chris Boo wound up leaving to join Jam Sandwich. We wound up getting Eric Ham to play drums for Undercover. That lasted, 6 months maybe, give or take. So that band fell apart. It was over. At that point, history repeats itself. Robbie Sparks calls me. Need a guitar player for UGT. At that point, UGT was on kind of a... They were almost like the Shake at the time. They had a lot of revolving members. Kenny was a drummer for them for a while. Before, I never had the pleasure of playing with Kenny when he was in the band. But at the time when I stepped in, it was myself, Corey Piles, Stacy Sparks, Robbie Sparks, and they actually hired a new bassist when they hired me, which was Shane Burkett from Mr. Whoopi. So I joined that band, had a blast doing it, night and day from what I was doing before. Most of the songs we were doing didn't even have guitar in them. I had to learn how to play the keyboard parts on the guitar and make it work, which was a lot of effects. It was fun, and it was challenging, not in a technical aspect by any means. It was like, how can I get this? There's no guitar in the song, so what can I do? And you'd follow the melody of the keyboard line for the most part. Like Hectic, that band blew up. UGT, we played some big shows. Played some big shows in Iowa. Corey, Master Booker, we were making money for a cover band, Hand Over Fist. It was awesome. That rode out for quite a while. The only negative to that is the opposite bug had hit Shane. Shane got tired of playing the pop danceable stuff. He wanted to start playing some heavy stuff again like he was used to in Mr. Whoopi. he wasn't unhappy, but he wanted that outlet. Would be a better way to phrase it. So he pitched to me the idea of putting together a side project. So he wound up calling Fig, Dustin, and Troy Mackey, and we formed a side band called Side Project because we didn't have another name call it at the time, and it worked. So yeah, he wanted to do Three Doors Down kind of style. So he thought we needed a new singer. He recruited John Wheatley, who of course I played with before with filling him at Trailer Park and in Undercover. I had the unfortunate pleasure of calling Troy and letting him know, which is something I regret to this day. We actually had a big fallout because of it. We've made up since then, as you'll learn later. But anyway, Troy's out, John's in. John came in, style totally changed. We're doing a lot more 90s stuff, Trailer Parkish kind of music. John's a really good frontman, really good booker. We got busier. It's more of what Shane had wanted for the band. At that time, UGT was kind of slowing down. The one goofy thing about Side Project is it kind of, a couple more members had come in. One reason or another, Fig wound up leaving the band. We had a couple different drummers. We actually had Brett Huntley play for us for a while. If you guys know Brett Huntley, amazing drummer, killer drummer for original material. The cover band forte was not his thing. He's used to doing Megadeth stuff, and we have him up there playing the Save a Horse Without a Cowboy. It was not his forte at all. He did it, but you could tell he didn't like it. He was in the band for a handful of gigs. Didn't last. I wound up calling Joey Franks, who was in Hectic 2, and Joey's in the band now. So we did that for a while. That band actually got real busy. We hosted a couple open stages at Goatees, playing majority of Fridays and Saturdays, busy all the time. At this point, UGT's going less and less gigs. That band eventually fizzled out, and we just wound up doing a side project. At that point, John had to step away from Side Project, and Joey, she brought in Brian Dennison, who was in Side Project for a couple months. It wasn't a whole lot of time. It was awesome to play with Brian. As you guys know, incredible vocalist, incredible guitarist. He runs circles around me, and he was like, "No, dude, you're the guitar player. You take the lead. You take the lead." I'm like, "Oh man, you got it." And it almost became an argument on which one would get it. But Brian, one of the nicest guys on the planet. Loved working with him. Of course, amazing vocalist. One thing that was goofy though, we always tuned down half step to accommodate for singers. Brian's the only male vocalist I've ever played with in my career where I've actually had to tune up. 440. That's Brian Dennis's baby. He does not like half step down tuning. He's got a high voice. He likes that 440 tuning. Well, anyway, we did that for a couple months, and at that point, I started losing a ton of weight and looked sickly. There's pictures out on Facebook of me I look at, and it's bad. I had learned that I had a thyroid issue, and it was a very serious one where I actually was hospitalized for a week. At that point in time, I also figured out my mom was diagnosed with leukemia, and I wasn't going to make it. At that point, I stepped away from music. Wound up selling everything, and I'm done. I'm going to deal with my health and hers, and walked away for a while.